Now, let's see how the media covered the raid on warmonger and serial leaker John Bolton's house and how they covered the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Here is the ABC's John Cowell. See if you can detect the subtle difference.
So he sees this as an opportunity to, again, portray himself as the victim. This is classic Donald Trump. He spent most of his presidency portraying himself as a victim of the Russia investigation, certainly his impeachments. And now he's portraying himself as a victim of a runaway and politicized Department of Justice.
In a moment, we'll get to the stunning developments coming into the weekend, with FBI agents swarming around the home and office of former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. But first, the context. This didn't happen in a vacuum. John Bolton is on a long list of Trump critics who are now facing the wrath of President Trump and his Justice Department.
Just shameless stuff from a shameless charlatan who has pushed every hoax from Russian collusion to the fine people lies in recent years. And thanks to Maze Moore for putting that content together. Let's look at CNN's treatment of the same news. Here is the thoroughly discredited Andrew McCabe before and after.
Let's remember that to get a search warrant in any case, whether it's you or I or the former president, you have to go before a federal judge and convince that judge that there is probable cause to believe both that a federal crime has been committed and that evidence of that crime is contained within the space you have described in your warrant request. So we have, in this situation, a federal judge who made that determination.
Now, that was the before. That was when Trump's property was raided, all very proper. But when Bolton was raided, well, this is clearly a case of political persecution. He was raided because he criticised the president, CNN claims.
We know that Mr. Bolton has said critical things about the president. That's not illegal. That's not a crime. That's pretty squarely within your First Amendment right in this country. And in fact, you shouldn't be. You're not supposed to be. The Department of Justice and the FBI have all kinds of policies absolutely prohibiting investigating people for the exercise of their First Amendment rights. And so if that's what's going on here, and there's all kinds of reasons to believe that that might be the true motivation.
Gosh, I wonder why trust in the media has hit record lows. Joining me now for more on this is Sky News contributor Kosha Gada. Kosha, what do you make of this raid and the media reporting around it?
The media, I think, as you say, trust has gone from infuriating, attitudes towards media, infuriating to irrelevant, really. I think it was tragically laughable at some point along the way, and now it's irrelevant, where nobody's taking them seriously. Their ratings are down, trust is down, audiences are down. But yet it is like this slow-moving train wreck to watch that, because everybody can do these split-screen before and after moments now in the age of the internet, and they know it, and yet they keep doing it. Maybe they're speaking to a small slice of the audience that doesn't consume that.
I think they count on their audience not being across that information. So
I think
they're going to get away with it. But that audience is diminishing.
Shrinking by the day.
We are seeing the online audience exploding, and this is where these real-time fact checks are happening, and people are seeing the media for who they are. Now, let's hear from Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, on efforts to root out those within the deep state who think their ideology trumps the Constitution and the will of the people.
There are deep state actors across the federal government, and they are people who, like Vindman, for example, who believe that their actions, their views are more important than those of elected leaders, duly elected by the American people, like the President of the United States. These are dangerous people because they believe their views and opinions supersede the United States Constitution that they all swear an oath to uphold, to support and defend, and that their views and opinions supersede those, again, who are elected by the American people, specifically the President of the United States.
Kosha, Tulsi went on to say she is determined to root out these individuals, but that is going to be a gargantuan task. These agencies, you could argue, have been corrupted by politics for decades.
Sure is. It's such a tall order. because they have these entrenched protected interests, and the system is self-preserving. So it's just really hard for somebody to come in and try to shatter decades of those entrenched protections. But if anybody can, she seems to be somebody who can, and she's meeting the moment. She's tough. She's patriotic. She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserves. She switched parties, which shows that she is principled and willing to go against the grain. She's got a personal vendetta because she was on the receiving end of some of this.
I was about to say, she's a personal victim of this politicization. And I think it's very clever of Trump to put together a team who've had a real personal insight into how bad the bureaucracy has become.
Absolutely. So many of them have been personally wronged, himself, of course, at the tip of that spear. And that is human nature, that it does give you extra mojo and extra motivation to go after this. So she's trying to do it. She's fired, I think, 40% of the staff, because that's a big part of it. The fewer people you have, the closer they are and better visibility you have into their motivations. But the clock is ticking. They've got 3.5 years left, so we'll see what happens.
Now, let's talk about Donald Trump firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook over allegations of mortgage fraud. Quite serious allegations. There is a criminal referral underway. But the media can only see race and gender. The New York Times has an article implying that she's being targeted because she is the first black woman to ever serve as Fed governor. She may have been appointed by Biden because she's black. Kosha, he was not shy about saying he was making decisions based on identity politics. But it's quite obvious that she's not being sacked because of her gender or her skin colour here.
That old chestnut, they will always go to that. And I think she's finding out that the lady parts and the skin color do not make you impervious to these things when people are going after them. She now makes number 3 of people that are specifically for mortgage fraud in the crosshairs right now. Adam Schiff, the Russiagate original hoaxer, who is probably lawyering up Letitia James.
Letitia James.
Which is the funniest because she charged
ironic.
Trump, very ironic, on that of which she is guilty. He wasn't and was just acquitted earlier this week from that ridiculous judgment. And Lisa Cook, it adds salt to the wound, especially because as a Fed Reserve governor, she is part of the panel that is in charge of interest rates, which are so high. And it's one of many reasons why young people are finding it difficult to get into the home ownership ladder. Meanwhile, she has been committing fraud and enjoys favorable interest rates, allegedly, because of the way she filled out her application. So that's also funny in its own way, and I don't think the race and gender shield is going to shield her.
No, and it is also, like you said, quite amusing that mortgage fraud is the issue for several of these bureaucrats, including Letitia James and now this Fed governor, when it was what they tried to get Trump on. They tried to bankrupt him over this. They tried to really destroy what he'd worked his life to build. And now they're being scrutinised for the way they're filling out their mortgage forms. And
so
I'm surprised at how haphazard they've been in.
So brazen, and it feels almost like they know that they're above the system. You know, they've been lecturing the other side. No one is above the law, but you would only be that careless, if you will, if you think that you're above the law and you will never be found out. It's a new day.
Now, Donald Trump is promising to extend his crackdown on violent crime from DC to other blue cities like LA, New York and Chicago. And that has upset the governor of Illinois.
We're very pleased about the progress that we're making. I know that I live rent-free in the president's head, and I wish he would spend some time in Chicago so that he could see what a lovely city we have. Governor, quick follow-up. What do you do if the National Guard is activated and comes here?
Kosha, this law and order policy is actually popular among voters. I would argue even among blue city voters, because they're the ones most touched by crime.
Absolutely. That's when your policy positions literally wind up at your doorstep or at your car door or, you know, wherever you might be being attacked. And the DC policy is wildly popular right now. There's all these amazing stats. There hasn't been a single murder in 2 weeks or whatever it is. Here, it will be difficult for Trump to test the boundaries of his power as the head of the executive branch, because DC was a special case. It's a federal district, and he could do that. Here, it is going to be interesting. I think there's going to be lawsuits and federalism and all that will be tested. But politically, it makes them look so bad that it's almost like they're pro-murder, they're pro-crime.
They're going out of their way to stop an effort to reduce violent crime. And in Chicago, as so many other parts of the US, the biggest victims of violent crime are those in the black community because they just suffer it disproportionately. So how does that look?
I think Stephen Miller was out saying that it makes them look evil, basically, for what they're doing. And you don't have to live this way. J.D. Vance was saying that you don't have to live this way. And it's sort of people have just accepted it as an inconvenient fact of life that the inner cities in the greatest country on earth have to be this way. And it doesn't have to be this way. So we shall see where this fight goes, but it would be amazing if you could actually take a place like Chicago, that's a top 10 city in terms of crime, and give it the Bukele treatment, El Salvador treatment, and clean it up.
Well, not whilst this dude is the mayor, because Chicago is a one-party town, and the mayor there, the far-left radical Brandon Johnson, thinks putting criminals in jail is racist and immoral.
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down.
Racist, immoral and unholy, Kosha. What exactly is the left's solution to the crime crisis? Because as you said, Chicago has one of the worst rates in the country.
And it used to be such a great city. Unholy was a new layer on top of that. But it's, again, going back to that shield of racism, if you dare to do anything. But on a serious note, unfortunately, they do believe that. If you look at Mamdani, you look at the defund the police, they really do seem to either believe it or really push that or suggest that somehow incarcerating criminals, which may disproportionately happen to be from one group more than another, is racist, and that's why they don't want to do it. But people are crying out for it. He's one of the worst mayors in the country, and he's headed for a standoff with President Trump.
Now to some local news. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has confirmed Iran's ambassador, Ahmed Sadeghi, will be expelled for his role in orchestrating at least 2 anti-Semitic attacks. That's after ASIO gathered enough intelligence to reach the deeply disturbing conclusion that the ambassador was involved. This is quite extraordinary, Kosha.
It's huge news. I think Penny Wong said it's the first time anybody an ambassador has been expelled since World War II, and maybe even longer. So to many, it feels like a pretty extreme response. However, the intelligence that they're citing saying that there's credible intelligence suggesting that they were linked to 2 cases of arson, basically, at a synagogue in Melbourne and a cafe in Sydney. And so they're making this move. I think more broadly, it's showing one tool that the Albanese administration is liking flexing right now in relation to the Middle East conflict. So you saw them banning the sitting MP from Israel last week to come and speak on that side of the equation, and now they're sort of correcting on this side of the equation. And I can't help but wonder if all that is linked, where they're trying to do this balancing act between both sides of this very contentious issue that is, especially in their party, kind of fractured.
Kosha Gada, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Pleasure.